My name is Kanahus Manuel. It means red woman in my Tanaka language. I'm both Secwepemc and Tanaka, which is located in what is now known as British Columbia, Canada. We come from an unceded, unsurrendered territory, no treaties in our territory. Anything west of the Rockies pretty well has not been treated, ceded, surrendered, released to any foreign government, Great Britain, Canada, nor BC. Our territory is the size of the UK. It's around 180,000 square kilometers. We come from glaciers, mountains, beautiful untouched valleys, roadless areas. We come from an area of the spilling waters. 5 of the major rivers all flow from the sacred headwaters that form in our lands.
That sounds extraordinary. And when you say that it's unceded, what does that mean? Does that provide maybe more of a legal chance to fight Kinder Morgan, or to how does that play out?
Unceded title is what we call hard law. When we're standing on our territorial authority, when we're standing on our rights, inherent rights to self-determination, our decision-making process, we stand on our title. And as Indigenous people, we always say we don't own the land, like we belong to the land, and we have this reciprocal relationship with the land. The land has provided us for tens of thousands of years, since time immemorial, and in turn, we give back to the land. So one of our responsibilities is to protect this territory. Now, in current day 2017, as we're trying to define these rights within, the international structures and within the Canadian, government structures that have been imposed upon us, we have this word we call title now. The radical title that's held in the province of BC, because no treaties have been signed, is held by the Indigenous people. Now they have crown title and fee simple title. If those do exist, then they rest on top of our title. Our title is the underlying title. And that's the strength that we're standing on. Because we've never had no formal surrender of our lands to any foreign government, including, the Queen of England, including the government of Canada. And so when we're fighting for our land rights, that also includes the protection of our lands, including the protection of what we call now the environment, or protection of nature, because our culture, our identity, our language all flows from the land. It's so interconnected and tied to who we are. Around our whole territory, all of our mountains have place names in our language. We have markings, traditional landmarks around the borders of our territory that tell us where our responsibility lies. It lies within this lands, and now we're battling, and one of the biggest threats that our nation is facing is this expansion and doubling of an already existing Kinder Morgan pipeline. This original old 1953 pipeline that was built did not have the consent of our people as well. And it's important to note that from 1927 to 1951, it was illegal for Indigenous people to gather in 3 or more to talk about the land issue like I am doing right now, or to hire lawyers to settle this unsettled, land issue in British Columbia. And so 1953, this pipeline was built, the original pipeline was built. What they're proposing now with the Trans Mountain Kinder Morgan pipeline is to build another type of pipeline adjacent to this already existing pipeline that would triple the capacity, and it would bring heavy crude, dirty oil from the Alberta tar sands, 1,152 kilometers from Edmonton terminal all the way to the terminal at the Salish Seas on the coast. This proposes to cut through the heart of our territory. So in order for it to get to, point A to point B, to the export to the global market to China, that's where they want to send it all, export it all. They want to go through 518 kilometers of Secwepemc territory, Secwepemc Uluch. And we come from a very beautiful area with glaciers and water. It's our most valuable, as you call, resource. It's our it's the veins. It's the veins that carry life into all of our territory. And in so-called British Columbia, every Indigenous community in this province known as British Columbia now, every single Indigenous community depends on salmon for their livelihood, for our sustenance. For people who are impoverished and don't have any type of money or wage economy, they depend on the salmon for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It sustains families, and that's one of our biggest threats is to our salmon, and we're not willing to risk it for a dirty oil pipeline. Justin Trudeau, he approved every single pipeline that came in front of him since he's been the Prime Minister of Canada. This is without the consent of the Indigenous people. We never gave Canada the consent, nor BC, and nor with this corporation of Kinder Morgan Canada, and for this Trans Mountain Pipeline project.
I know yesterday you had an important meeting with Credit Suisse. Can you tell us a little bit about how that went?
Yes, we met with Credit Suisse here in Zurich, Switzerland, to inform them that Kinder Morgan does not have the consent of the Indigenous people for this pipeline project. The international minimal standards for corporations and government to abide by is the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of the Indigenous People, which states are already existing inherent rights to self-determination, but also that corporations and government need the free, prior, informed consent of Indigenous people to put industrial projects like that through the territories where they will be the most greatly impacted, and they don't have the consent. So the Tsleil-Waututh Nation have met in a big assembly in the beginning of June in our traditional governance assembly to address this situation, this very serious, urgent situation in our nation of the threats of this pipeline coming through. And the Tsleil-Waututh people have said no, there is no consent, and there's Indigenous peoples all along this whole route that do not give their consent for this pipeline project. So we came here to Europe to meet with some of these international banks and financiers, as well as the insurance companies, to inform them that Kinder Morgan does not have the consent of the Indigenous people. And it's some of the standards that banks have to abide by.
Excellent. It's really inspiring that you are, well, this entire movement is an inspiration to the world community. And I wanted to ask you, for people who want to follow what you're up to and to continue, for example, I know there's the Tiny House Project. Perhaps tell us a little about the Tiny House Project and what can people do to support, to help, to follow what's going on?
Well, one of the things that one of the campaigns that we're working on right now is Tiny House Warriors, Our Land is Home. You could find that on the internet, either at tinyhousewarriors.com or tinyhousewarriors.ca. You'll find information about this campaign. We chose as a creative way to resist against this pipeline is to build 10 tiny houses on wheels, so they'll be mobile, and we will be deploying them on the direct path of the Kinder Morgan pipeline, the proposed pipeline route, to block construction of this project. We already know that delays are costing into $88 million or so plus a month in costs for the delays through direct action, through different things that are causing delays of this project. So direct action is one of the tactics that we really choose to use, because we need our people to get right on and confront them. We, as the government has told us in the past, if you're sleeping on your rights, you don't have no rights. So we're asserting our rights and our jurisdiction to the territory. We're blocking construction, but we're asserting our own Tsleil-Waututh territorial authority and jurisdiction on our territories to exclusively occupy our lands in which we have rights. And one of the biggest things that we're addressing right now is the industrial man camps. So this is where men, the labor workforce, the contractors and the construction crew to build these pipelines, they're bringing them in the thousands. So one of the camps that have been applied for is in Blue River, which is in a beautiful portion of our territory where we still pick our huckleberries and our scosa and our wild blueberries and our mountain berries, and where we hunt. And they want to put a camp that will house 1,000+ men, and working with other movements across Canada and linking how these industrial man camps increase the violence, the sexual violence against women. We already have murdered or missing Indigenous women federal inquiry going on in Canada right now, addressing the murdered or missing Indigenous women. And these issues are coming up of the links between the industrial man camps and the murdered or missing Indigenous women. So as an Indigenous woman and as a organizer, against these pipeline projects, we feel very unsafe that they will bring mass amounts of men into our communities. And it's always the most vulnerable in our nations, and that's the Indigenous women in our communities. So it's not a safe practice. It's not creating a safe place in communities for our nations. And Kinder Morgan has responded to several of our media requests for comment, but their response is always like, we believe in the right to peacefully protest, but we also want to create safe environment for their workers and their construction crews. And what I say to that is that this pipeline is not safe. It's not safe for our salmon. It's not safe for our children's water. And these man camps and bringing them into our communities are not safe for our Indigenous women and our young girls. And so we want to create a safe environment, and that's why we are here uniting with other people around the world that really believe in protecting our water, that really believe in upholding Indigenous rights and not violating Indigenous rights. And so that's why we are here. We're here not only to meet with these banks and insurance companies, but to build on this global movement to protect our earth and to save our planet, from this climate catastrophe. And as we know, the Alberta tar sands is the largest industrial project in the world and one of the biggest carbon bombs in the world too. So this isn't only impacting people of BC, this is going to impact the climate around the world.
Right. I think that at one of your talks, perhaps Saturday night, you or Cedar said that this work is not only helping your families, but the families of Kinder Morgan. It's like your dedication to your people, to your land, to your community, to your nation is something that benefits everyone. When you think about the role that water and our environment, its sacred nature plays in our world. And so once again, it's a real honor to meet you. And I think particularly for me, it's very inspiring to see the role of Indigenous women in this movement. Can you speak a little bit about that, being a warrior woman? And I know you come from a family with a long tradition of engagement, of really, standing up and protecting the earth and your people. So, yes, I suppose tell us a little bit about being a warrior woman and connected to your family and your history.
Well, I was born into the movement, and our people have been resisting since contact. I mean, the impacts that the Canadian government has had on my family, my grandfather, my great grandparents, my grandparents, and my father all went to the Indian residential school. So I am the first generation. But that did not stop my grandfather from still resisting and elevating our Indigenous land rights and our fight for self-determination from a local to the international level. Same with my father, and he continued to do that work, and this legacy that of our people and especially my family that continues to fight for our rights from the local to the international level. As an Indigenous woman, it's not always the easiest fight, because we see our Indigenous women in South and Central America and Mexico that are being murdered for speaking up against mining companies and oil and gas companies. So the same targeting goes on there, maybe not at the same extreme. It might be a little covert and not so out there, but I've been targeted, and I have done 3 months in a Canadian prison for my standing up for our people's rights and our title to our lands. we come from a matriarchal society, where it's the women, the women are the life givers. We know it's the women that calls war. It's the women that, declares our warriors to go out and fight these battles, because then we're sending our fathers and we're sending our uncles and we're sending our sons, out to battle. So it's serious. It's very serious when we commit to a fight, and it might not be with, bullets and guns and bombs, but that fight in the Indian wars have never ended in our lands. They've been using very different, like, these forms of warfare tactics on our people, and it's a psychological warfare, stripping us of our language, stripping of us our culture through these government-imposed school systems. As a woman and as a mother, I'm a mother of four, really trying to decolonize our ways and really revive our own culture and the power of our language and the power of our songs and our dances with my children, and trying to raise them as little into this colonized world. So I don't send them to the public school system in Canada. I school them and educate them in our own education. What does education look like when we say our own education? Learning the plants, learning how to survive, learning how to build their own home so they can stay warm. That's their graduation, is if you're able to build your home, you're not spending a lifetime paying off a home. And so those are the types of skills that we want to leave as a mother. But those are also, as nurturers, we nurture and we birth the whole nation. And it's, as a birth worker too, as being at birth, being requested to go help and be there present while women are giving birth, a traditional birth keeper, you see the importance of bringing back our ceremonies straight from birth, right from conception, right into birth, and bringing those ceremonies are very powerful, because that imprinting that are now in our children, that our parents were never able to receive because of the impacts of colonization. We're bringing that back. So right from the baby's first breath, and hearing those songs and smelling our medicines, and those being able to connect in that way spiritually, it's bringing a whole new decolonized generation about that are going to be way more powerful than us, and it's the youth. And I'm traveling here with a young man. He's 20 years younger than me, and he's taught me, more than someone older than him. He has a lot of knowledge, and you can see the dedication and the drive that our young people have. And I have hope. We have hope with this younger generation, and we have hope that our children are going to be able to continue on this battle at a very that we're going to get farther, and they're going to be able to fight from this platform, and we're going to continue, and we're going to get our end goal, which is freedom on our territory without any type of intervention by any other foreign entity.
May it be so. Thank you. Is there anything else that you would like to share, or anything else that is important to add?
Yeah, I want to say that this movement and this divestment movement here in Switzerland is going to continue to grow. There's dedicated people and organizations dedicated into really putting pressure on these institutional banking banks and insurance companies, and we have faith, and that these relationships are just going to continue to grow, and we're going to be able to work together from both our territories in Canada and here in Switzerland to educate all of our people, and get to a higher understanding of what we want in our life: our clean water, our clean air, a better world for the future, and that we can do it together.